Hello, everyone. This is Lo Sontag, and I am here with Dionne Ford. I am so excited. I am such a fan. I look a fangirl of your work for a while, and I was so happy that you came to my first reading. I was like, oh, I feel like I'm famous now. And that's
Hey,
it's like I was telling people, I was like, Diane Ford is here.
it was
Um, so I'm just excited to have you here. And to my second reading. And we're just gonna jump into it. All right.
good.
Um, your memoir, Go Back and Get It, is about returning to family, to history, and how much of return is also about returning to places.
I think that's such a wonderful question, and I think a lot of it is returning to places. A big part of the memoir came out of me physically returning to places, and then feeling compelled to um, collect that, and collect my feelings about that return, um, and yeah, archive it, and um, process it and leave it for my kids and next generation. So yeah, I think a lot of this um, going back and get it is about physical spaces for sure. Yeah.
Do you think that we underestimate how much geography shapes identity, especially in racialized ways?
Yeah, I think we do. I think, and I do this myself, I'm guilty of it. Guilty of thinking that because, I share like an ancestry with people geographically that, originates in Africa, that we might be simpatico, but really, I might be more inclined to feel a strong connection to somebody who's from the Northeast of the United States, or especially certain parts of New Jersey.
No,
Under
no, I mean that's so true. I think, and it's kind of like because of racialization, we kind of feel like, oh, we don't have that. We do have that connection, which is very, it is. I can go more into that, but I'm not going. This is your interview, not about low. Anyway, um, so space is a means of production. Like it holds power. That where you are determines what's possible. How did the places in your family history shape what was possible for them and for you? And we can even, go back to kind of like your other answer in regards to like how place is kind of like how you feel connection to people. Um, I know it's a big question,
big,
but
but an important question. And, I think how it shaped me was, first of all, because my father wanted to get out of a specific space, he joined the Air Force. Um, and that put him in spaces, where he met my mother, and it put them in spaces. These were two kids from the South who met in England and then raised kids in New Jersey. And so those spaces completely shaped me, that my parents had been from the South, but raised us in the North. Um, and that we had access to a different childhood than my parents did because they each, my dad made this decision and my mom's dad made a certain decision that brought them to the same place at the same time. So geography and locations, locales were tremendously important to shaping me. And my dad and mom, like where they came from, also shaped kind of my longing for knowing about that because it was so different than where they were raising us. Does that, if that makes sense?
It totally makes sense. My dad, he was from Alabama and he joined the army and ended up in Los Angeles. I'm a fifth generation Angelino, so it's kind of weird. I don't, people always kind of go, "You're weird," and I think that the weirdness people see in me is because I have that such deep roots in Los Angeles rather than the South, which is traditional for African Americans. But yes, I definitely know. Like, and I remember I said something about I was talking to my father about the South at one point, and I remember he's like, "I know." I was just like, I.
I was there.
I was there, so I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, um, so when you were writing your memoir, did certain locations carry emotional or historical weight differently than others? Like, you know, you have, the South and the North, we have this really interesting, African Americans have this really interesting relationship. Like, what was one harder than the other? Did something surprise you?
Yeah, you know what really surprised me, and I didn't really think about this, even though I had visited the place where my dad was born and lived until they moved to New Orleans. I visited there as a kid and as a young adult, but it wasn't until I went back there to do my research that I realized how much it reminded me of the place where we lived in New Jersey when I was a kid. In South Jersey, we lived at the tip of the Pine Barrens, very sandy, piney, and that's how my dad's town was, Ocean Springs, sandy and piney, you know. And that really surprised me. And then it made my father make so much sense to me in a way he didn't as someone who I always thought of him as someone who lived in New Orleans, which he did. But before he lived in New Orleans, he was born in Ocean Springs and lived there until he was 11, which I lived in my South Jersey town until I was 11. And so I understood something about his personality, his kind of difficulty with working in New York City, his desire to have more quiet in his life. Suddenly all made sense to me in a way that it hadn't for decades, really. Yeah.
So weird. That's interesting. I did my family on my mother's side, we moved from New Orleans in 1890. So I kind of like my experience from New Orleans is like very, very long time ago, but it's weird because so many of us in Los Angeles, we were Black Catholics. And until I became an adult, I didn't realize that Black people weren't Catholic. Um, anyway, when you brought that up, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Maybe that's why I was drawn to you. I don't know. Anyway, what does it mean to inherit not just trauma, but because I mean that's something that people talk about a lot, but like landscapes, neighborhoods, regions, and even the absences of places. Like, what does it mean to inherit that? Like, kind of like in a way, I feel like we've kind of inherited similar things. And I wasn't really planning on, that being a thing for this interview, but, you know, can you
Yeah.
go into a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I can for me because the older I get, the more I see people navigating their inheritances in a variety of incredible ways, and which I admire. I mean, I'm always shocked when I'm talking to a friend and I learn something about them that I didn't know that seems so devastating to me. And then I'm like, and God, look at you, thriving, being a full person. And so for me, it definitely has been looking at the ways that I have tried to navigate those traumas that are also connected, like for example, addictions, and I see that through my line. But then also, to I guess have like a soft eye, softer eye on the way generations of my family have tried to navigate what life dealt them. So yeah, I think for me it's been a lot about trying to have a little bit of emotional distance from these things that tie me in a painful way to family legacies. And then also kind of being celebratory about the things that people have managed to get through, you know. I think that was the most exciting thing for me with this memoir was seeing how long my great great grandmother lived, you know, and half of her life was spent enslaved. And to then see that, you know, she definitely made a life for herself that seemed, from my perspective anyway, rich. Well, so that's a legacy I hope to to inherit, you know. So yeah, I guess what it's meant for me is to try to have like a soft eye about it, and maybe some like a generous spirit about it, not get too um overly invested in the like just one aspect of it, the pain, you know, but also remembering that many people also is endure. So there's both. I guess trying to be even-handed about it. Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's very important to kind of see like both sides of things, to see like the joy, the complexity, that is, and I think that, I think too, as your role as a, in journalism, in memoir writing, in nonfiction creative, it, and especially in a creative way, it lends itself to seeing things in a variety of ways. Um, and I want to say, like, what role do journalists and writers play in shaping memory, and what are they getting wrong, and what are they getting right? Like when you think about, as yourself as a writer, within the kind of like the we call it the nonfiction creative area and journalism area, what do you think is, you know, going well and going not so well, especially in this bizarre time that we are in the timeline?
Yeah, oh my gosh. I mean, I think the first thing that comes up for like things that we're doing not so well is I get disappointed when I hear journalists, especially journalists that I admire, like kind of regurgitating um I don't want to say propaganda, but like adopting kind of rhetoric, you know, either
Hmm.
that's like straight out of the administration or straight out of, you know, a powerful entity's like PR book, you know. Um, that disappoints me because I want journalists to contextualize things for me, you know. So, um, yeah, I think it's really important to remember that that's like the journalist, for a journalist to remember that that's their job is to bring you the facts and then give us the context that we need. We can make our own decisions about them, you know? So, and I think one of the things, not so much now, but one of the things that I remember feeling like that would happen a lot around was reparations, like this idea that it's impossible, it can't be done, and it's been too long, or it's unprecedented. And it's like, well, actually, it's not unprecedented, you know, and not impossible. Um, so those are the kinds of things that I think about historically, I feel like have been perpetuated for a long time and not so much now. You know, there's definitely more, there is more contextualization now about reparations, thank goodness. But a lot of people had to do a lot of work just to get that, you know? So those are the two things that pop up and in my mind at the moment. But yeah, I don't like hearing like the government's like way of like um just categorizing things or summing them up, then being regurgitated through a journal. That makes sense.
No, I see that. I remember when I had a small newspaper in Los Angeles, and we would have people send us stuff. They're kind of like you could just kind of like, oh, you could print this, and I was like, this is an ad or propaganda, and you had to pay for that. And I wouldn't take your money anyway. But I mean, yeah, you're like, and it's weird because I think journalism has been so starved. They don't even have, they can't pay people. So they essentially are like just, they're so open and so willing, not willing, I don't think they meet, it's something they do on purpose, but it's kind of like they just take information from PR people and then just, okay, just put it out there. So it's good that we're having this, you see that happening and seeing it, especially too, as you are a professor in the writing world, in creative writing and journalism. It's important that you tell, because some people don't even know they're doing it. So it's so good that you know it's happening because you can't stop something if you don't know what's happening. Um, but now we're gonna jump to another topic. Um, just as heavy. Your work on lynching in the North challenges the idea of racial terror is Southern or only Southern. What does it mean for cities like Newark, New York, or even New Jersey to confront the history spatially? I have to say that when I moved here, I was kind of shocked. Um, I was shocked about certain things, and that's
Like
all I'm
what?
gonna say. Like what? I think I think the West is a little bit different, and I'm not saying it's better. I think it's the West is the future, and that's not good. But I think that it is the North has been very interesting in regards to I guess having to deal with certain kinds of explicit things that I didn't have to actually deal with at when I was in California. But I want to be very careful when I say this because I don't want people to think like, "Oh, California is some dream place." Like we had cameras in California before you guys did. We don't need we don't need an individual to call for racism to happen, which I think is slightly different than on the East Coast, where it's still a very personal thing. But remember, this is about you. So we want to, we will, so we'll, what does it mean? Like in Newark and New Jersey, why does it feel this way here? Tell us why, Diane, you know.
So interesting. I think, so I think New Jersey being a northern state has an idea about itself that's not historically accurate. Um, we we are very diverse, demographically. And so we think that that reinforces the story we have about ourselves, that we are liberal. But, if you look at our voting history, that is not our truth. Um, we never voted for Lincoln twice, you know, like how is that possible? We did not. And we were like the last northern state to abolish slavery. How is that if we're so liberal? So, and I think that that shows up in the legacy today and how you feel, and how we are treated, you know. So I think there's a real reason why those things were happening, had to do with money. It's always about money, oppression, in my opinion, never about ideals or morality or anything. That's just window dressing to say, I'm greedy and I want more money. And if I have to step on your liberty to get it, I'm going to do it. And I'll make a law about it. So it's easier for me, you know? So yeah, so I think that shows up in the spaces. And I think you were also talking about were you talking about like, no, maybe you weren't talking about this memorials? No, you weren't talking about that. You were just talking about how it physically feels here, right?
Well, also, it is. It's also, how should public space change when we acknowledge those histories? Should we have markers? Should we have memorials? Should we rename stuff? Should it be something deeper? I think it's really interesting is I always kind of wondered like, you know, should people when they do acknowledgments, should they, like a place like say a place like Bergen, which essentially Bergen County, which benefited a lot from enslavement of African Americans, should they say something? But you know what? If you did say something, what should you say? I don't know if I would feel better. I think I would be like, it would just make me mad. So I'm just like, what do you think? As a person from New Jersey, what do you think? Like, what should how should a public space change once we know these things happening? Once we know that New Jersey was one of the last places that kind of enforced the Emancipation Proclamation, and they still had these kind of like we call it um, internships. Or mentorships, which always makes me feel kind of weird when I hear like we want to do job training. What should we do?
Yeah, so I feel like the first step is always um, acknowledgement, once you're aware of something, acknowledge it. And so I am a fan of public spaces being memorialized when we understand, their real history. Um, and I, though, am a big fan of that being done in concert with the community. I don't think it's a good idea to like, oh, I found this out. Now I'm gonna, you know, get a petition going and I'm gonna put up a plaque, No, that could be like another reharm. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's super important to connect with the people who are most affected by the harm, to make sure that the way you're telling the story doesn't cause further harm and is on the road to real reconciliation. And so yeah, I'm a big fan of acknowledging and through changing public space or maybe opening up public space, that. Was once closed. I am big on that. Yeah. I think it's
Oh
the
my
first.
goodness. No, I'm just like, yeah, this is like a kind of a heavy conversation. But the thing is that you write about heavy things. So it's hard to have like a kind of a light conversation with you. Um, do
But I just seem to keep going there. So maybe
you do, but you do. But I mean, I think the thing that's so interesting about you, Dion, is that you seem so light. Some people seem very not like light, but I mean, I don't know what's a better word. You seem accessible. So like, I don't feel troubled. There's some people that I talk to and I feel like I feel troubled. Like I'm like I don't feel better after this conversation. But I do feel more comfortable every time when I read your work, when I talk to you, when I see you, I feel like more like, okay, things are gonna work out. This is gonna work out. I know that like, it's kind of bizarre. But I think it's just kind of a weird, I feel like, okay, moving on. Do you see storytelling as a way of reclaiming space, even when the physical landscape hasn't changed?
absolutely. Yes, I do. I mean, especially like in terms of the memoir work that I was doing, which was very much about reclaiming ancestors who I felt were erased from the American narrative. I think definitely putting people back in a story that have been purposefully erased from it is a way to reclaim space. Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Um, we tell ourselves stories about who we are. And I think if we don't include certain people, then we're just being dishonest, And so putting my ancestors back in the space of the American story, yeah, was a way of reclaiming certain kind of, I guess, um, emotional space. Yeah.
No, it's truly, I mean, So, what would it mean to truly go back and get it in an urban context? What are we retrieving and what are we rebuilding?
Yeah, it might not be rebuilding, because I don't think for, people who were descended from enslaved people that there was ever a real, there was no promise here. We were here to, enrich other people's lives. We weren't given um, a hope here. So I wouldn't look at it as reclaiming in that sense as much as I would claiming something that we're owed, um, or yeah, for helping build this country without being at all um, compensated for it, from our our ancestors' original labor. Yeah.
So, yeah, that is very true. Like reclaim what? Exactly. Claiming something from the beginning. So, what are you working on next? Because I'm like so excited. Like, what are you working on next? Who's your next project?
So my next project was supposed to be my first project. I started writing this book a really long time ago, a novel, and it was what sent me to go get my MFA in fiction. And then I ended up leaving my MFA program with a memoir. So I'm really excited to return to this novel. It's kind of tentatively, I don't have a, I'm not sure about the title right now. I'm calling it Exchange, but it's about a girl who goes to Brazil at the end of the military dictatorship, an American, to, have an exchange year, but really to like get away from her family, get away from her country, get away from her life, and finds herself in the same exact experience that she was trying to run away from.
I've always wondered that when people went to Brazil and they were like, it was wonderful. And I'm always kind of like, how? Oh, I've always, so yeah, I want you to finish that book. I needs to be finished because I need to see that because I would also, I've always been curious, and I didn't want to judge people, but it comes out with my own head. I'm just kind of like when I meet people, who go to Brazil, I'm always very because they're like, it's a wonderful place, it's fabulous, it's whatever. So yes, that is very interesting. And with that, I want to wrap up what this conversation, because actually I could talk to you for a really long time. But because I'm so interested in regards to like I'm so excited to hear you read. I'm so excited to hear your next project. And just so I just feel like you're one of those people that like 50 years from now, people are gonna be like, oh, and Dionne Ford. And I'd be like, oh, I interviewed her. If I'm still alive. And
You're kind. And
yeah. No. I think that you're very, you're one of the talents. And, thank you for your work and thank you for spending time with us. And I'm looking forward to hearing you read at Dorothy Parker Read Here. And that's it. That's it. So thank you so much, Diane.
thank you. It's Dionne. Diane's my sister, but that's okay.
Okay, Dia, I'm so sorry. I'm like,
I'm named after New Jersey's own Dionne Warwick. So
yeah, okay. Yes, that's true. I was just, you know what? I was wondering if that was the same case. If that was that. Okay, so you were. Okay, okay. Yeah. You guys might not know that. You know, it's so funny. So many people are from New Jersey that I thought were New Yorkers, and then I'm like, you're from, you're from New Jersey. And I would say that all the best people in New York are from New Jersey.
yeah, we got the heavy hitters. We do. We do. We got them all.
Truly, that's true. That's the truth. Everybody, it's very interesting. All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, love, so much. This was great.